If I have to enforce or share somebody, I'm gonna do that. That's what I do. I hold the shit. You got 10 gangbangers in a room. They're ready to rip your head off. And you know what he did was wrong. If you're gonna play politics, let's play it all the way. I think I've overstepped the boundaries of what I've previously seen on 60 Days In. I'm in so deep. At this point, I'm past being in too deep. It is what it is.
All right, so Abner, it's very nice to meet you, man.
Pleasure's mine.
Some of you guys may recognize Abner from the show 60 Days In. He was on the season prior to mine. You did pretty good on the show, man. I think some would say maybe almost too good, right?
Yeah. No, I just try to be myself on the show. I want it to be real. I didn't want it to be scripted or being in there like, I wanted to show people a little bit of what it's really like. And that's not even 5% of what real prison or jail is like.
Right. No, I definitely relate to that. And it was similar to like when I did my segment on Narcoland, was I just wanted to show people what the world of addiction, drug dealing, and drugs like really looks like, like an in-depth, like unprecedented way. So I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit, but I want to hear some of your backstory. So like, where are you from?
I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
And I was from Puerto Rico. My parents are from Puerto Rico, but I was born in New York City, and I have 6 other siblings. I'm the youngest, and my father was a pastor, upbringing Pentecostal, and we pretty much were raised in church. My father left my mother. They got divorced when I was 5 years old. That's where my downfall started, when I was 5 years old, not having a father present. And when we were 5, we ended up moving from place to place, Puerto Rico, Pennsylvania, upstate New York, just bouncing back and forth, getting evicted. Sometimes we had gas, sometimes we didn't have light. It was just depending on the season, Basically, I grew up poor.
I heard previously you got involved in the gang life. Like, how exactly did that start? How old were you?
I was about 15 years old, and I was living in, at the time I was going back and forth from Brooklyn, New York to Buffalo. And I was I want to say the first time that I committed an actual crime, I was about 16 years old. And I walked into a pizzeria in Buffalo, New York, and that's where a lot of people recognized who I was. And I shot 2 people in the legs. When I went from there to prison at 16, I didn't have to be initiated because they knew my level of violence was, let's get along,
So when you went to prison, was it actually like adult prison, like as a 16-year-old, or did you have to go to some type of juvie or something like that?
Yeah, no, I ended up doing what they call doing life in the county. So I ended up doing the whole 3 years because I was underage and they couldn't charge me technically as an adult, but they did. Mm-hmm. But my sentence couldn't be over. So what they did was they gave me life in the county, which was 3 years. So I ended up doing 3 years county time because they denied my youthful offender.
So what was it like doing, 3 years as a minor in a jail with grown men? What was that like?
With grown men, yeah. I was in Erie County Holding Center, upstate New York in Buffalo. And from there they sent me to Wendy's. And it was pretty much like adult, because my charge wasn't for a 16-year-old. I was 16 going on 17, and here I am already a year in the county. But being around adults, that's pretty much what got me more, like what you say, the graduation to being institutionalized and a criminal. Because I learned more in them 3 years than what I barely learned my whole life going to school.
So basically you grew up like in a jail cell then? right?
Yes.
And that's where you learned like how to live your life, how to be a man. You know, I'm assuming from like not the greatest role models in the world. So how long did that life of like crime and everything continue on for you?
It continued on from like around 1989 to the last time I got convicted of a crime, which was 2009. So from 1989 to 2009, I never saw a full cycle year. It was always like 3 years, 8 months, 2 years, 7 years in the feds, 3 years again. It was like, I was literally at that point just not even going to trial. I was just taking a plea and let's go upstate, because you get institutionalized and you get used to it. You think that's really life, It's like you go to prison, you come home, and your buddy buy you a pair of sneakers and a chain, and hey, good job. So you kind of think that it's okay to be going to jail and being in a gang and sticking people up and shooting people. You think it's normal.
No, that's crazy too. So like there was never a year you were out a full year, right? It was just out for a couple months, back into prison. So you've done ton of time in federal prison as well?
I've done time in federal prison and state prison.
Okay.
I did 84 months, which is 7 years in the feds for weapons possession and altering weapons.
So one thing I found really interesting, I was watching a couple of your clips earlier today to like brush up on like, who you were and some of the stuff you did on the show as well. I saw you were the first person that was ever on 60 Days In that had ever like actually been in prison before. Everybody else, it was like first time, they're overwhelmed, like, oh my God, I don't know how to handle jail, right? So I assume for you, what was the transition like for you stepping back into that life after, so long?
Yeah, basically when they reached out to me and I went on the show, I never heard literally of 60 Days In. When they reached out to me, I literally blocked them because I thought it was a joke for me to go to jail for 60 days. Like,
right? Why would I ever want to go back? Spend my whole life there.
Yeah, so I actually, talked to my family and, but when I went in, it literally hit me when them handcuffs were on. Because after wearing those handcuffs 30 times, I've had misdemeanors, I had felonies, attempted murders, accessory to murder, everything you could think of. Doesn't matter how small the crime, anytime those handcuffs are on you and behind you, that's when reality hits you. So it wasn't for me going through the intake. It was when them handcuffs were on me. And it was literally like let's go.
Yeah.
There was no...
Like flip the switch for you.
Yeah, it was, and I was, even for myself, I was like, where this line's been hiding inside of me, and I've been going to church, living civil, paying taxes, voting, working, and this line is still inside of me. And when those handcuffs pretty much went on, it was like I didn't even know the sheriff. It was like I was blind. Let's just go in. Let's. You want to see what prison is like, jail's like? Let's go in. When I went into intake and stripped down, that's when every little thing that kept playing in my mind kept reminding me of either upstate, a max prison, federal, or state. And it was like a transformation. You literally turn into Hulk.
So I definitely want to talk a little bit more on that because I think that's a really interesting aspect. Like obviously you changed your life like night and day. And then having to go back to that life I know is very difficult because for me on my season it was kind of a similar thing, just different. I had to go back to like hanging around people that were actively getting high every day. Going out to the bars every night, hanging around dealers and stuff. So that was a transition. But before I get into all that, I really want to hear about your testimony. So you're in the active gang life for what, 20, 30 years?
Yeah, about 20-something plus years.
20 plus years you're in an active gang life. Like, what changed for you? Like, why did you change, and then how? I'm really curious to know.
I mean, when I first started in upstate New, everywhere I went to, I was always in a gang. So when I was in upstate New York living with my mother, I was in a gang. I actually was one of the 4 founding fathers of a gang called 10th Street in Buffalo, New York. And when I came there, upstate New York and Buffalo, I already came with the mentality of Latin Kings and the structure of founding a gang. So they were just running around, no. We're going to call it 10th Street because where I'm from, we go by numbers and streets. So this is our area. So it was almost like always leadership in gangs, But me with the gang life, when you're in prison, gang life is different than when you're in the street. When you're in the street, pretty much when you go to meetings and you're in the gang and you provide. So the way you provide is you sell drugs, you stick people up, they give you a green light, you go handle it. Green light is pretty much shooting somebody or doing something to somebody that violated the gang. Mm-hmm. So pretty much to me, it was like fair game. That's how it was in the street. So back and forth from the culture of being in prison and being in the street, it's almost like it fit like a glove because when you go to prison, you get soap, you get candy bars, you get cigarettes, that's your family. They take care of you as long as you're bona fide. Your paperwork's good, you're good in there. It doesn't matter. And it's like the trophy for where I was coming from, a cop killer is the one that gets the medals. So it was like, I was more like a predator. I would chase people, follow them. It took me a week, 2 weeks. I watched you in the club, barber shop, and just pretty much stake out your routine. And you were fair game because when you're in the gang, you're protected. So if you're not in the gang, that means I have power over you because you're not going to do anything to me because I have, a backup. So it was more with that mentality and that you kind of think you almost have power. So it's like a power trip, which was the same thing with me when I was in 60 Days In.
Would you say it's almost like an addiction in itself?
Yeah, it's definitely an addiction. I mean, I have a brother that's he's been an addict for 30 plus years. He's blown millions of dollars, literally. Me and him is no difference because my addiction was the lifestyle. Going to the clubs, buying 1 or 2 cars, motorcycles, jet skis. You're financing your habit, and your habit is the adrenaline of that lifestyle.
Yeah.
Being paranoid, and I got a gun on me, and
getting shot at, shooting at people.
Oh yeah, and
the whole just the lifestyle.
The whole lifestyle. Even living in the house. When I had my house, I had a gun under the sofa, one behind the fridge, one in the bathroom, like a gun everywhere. You get addicted, and there's really nobody chasing you. You're the one that's making your own problems. But it's an addiction. It's like going out on weekends and being, it's just the lifestyle. The respect you get from somebody, because in the street, people don't respect. The addiction comes with the fear of people. So when you're out in the street and you got a bulletproof vest and a 45 with an extended clip, people respect that. And they respect it more because they know you're going to use it.
Right.
But the minute I turn into who I am now, it's like you're like, it's like you relapsed. Because you left that, but me going on 60 days was like a relapse.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense. So basically, kind of how I see it, like, obviously, like I knew going on Narcoland, and like for those that don't know, it was a show similar to 60 Days In, except I was living in the streets. I was around people, selling drugs, using drugs, whatever. If I hadn't been clean for like 4 years plus at the time, it would have been very difficult for me to go in that environment. Like, it probably was a very stupid thing for them to put me in that environment.
Yeah,
you know what
true.
I mean? Like, it literally was like playing with my life in a lot of ways. Because most people, when you are an addict and you're exposed to what you're addicted to, it's like very difficult, let alone like living in it every single day. So I can imagine for you that like being up in there, it probably piqued all of those senses that you're talking about. Like the adrenaline of like you're in jail. You're like, okay, who's gonna jump me? Like, who do I have to fight? Like, how do I protect myself? How do I make sure this guy's not checking me, or I'm not looking like a bitch, or like whatever it may be, right? So it probably put you in a really hard spot where you like have this great life where like, you kind of transformed your life, you're a man of God, transformed, and then just like snap, you're back in hell, like literally, So I can imagine like how difficult that would be, because that's what I mean. Like, you know, I'm talking to you and I'm thinking like they literally grabbed like an actual, like true blue like criminal, you know, like former criminal, you know, gang member, put him on this show, and then people are upset when he like. You know, I saw some people got upset with you that you like did certain things on there. I'm like, well, what do you think's gonna happen? You know, like he's in survival mode. You know, that's how I saw it, at least. You know, obviously you did better than just about anybody on the show as far as like getting intel, getting close, blending in. You know, you were an enforcer for your pod, right? So tell me a little bit more about that. Like, how hard was it, I guess, to blend back in? Was it hard at all? Was it difficult? How long did it take you to earn people's trust? Tell me about that.
I was even surprised myself once I went home and watched the show. And I went pretty much in there and it was the same structure. And it's funny because here where I'm from, New York State, the structures are different. It's by gang and it's by where local where you're from. So if you're in a black gang, that's your gang. There's two gangs. There's Bloods and there's Crips.
Right.
You're in a Spanish gang, you're a Nieta or you're a Latin King. So if you're white, you're either Aryan, or you're a redneck. There's different gangs.
Right.
But it's still the same structure. So when I went to Arizona, I Googled a little bit about it. And I'm like, only two gangs there. There's Paisas and Chicanos. So I already knew that the Chicanos vouch pretty much for anybody that's from Hawaii, Mexican, Puerto Rican, anyone of Greek descent, anyone.
Yeah, it goes more by like race and
right.
You know, there's like Hispanics, and the Hispanics, they hang with the Hispanics. Whether if on the streets you're like a different gang, doesn't really matter as much in there, right? It just goes by what race you're.
Yeah, it goes because you could be white and you could be a blood. It doesn't matter. I mean, your gang is your color, your race.
Right.
But there it was different. There it was like 3. And it's like, okay, I can't go here because I'm not, from Mexico. I'm from here. So I already knew what the process was going to be when I got greeted. So when I walked in, automatically, I knew I can't say I'm Mexican because I know in Puerto Rico I don't talk like a Mexican.
Right.
So I said, no, I'm Puerto Rican, but I'm Chicano. Oh, you Chicano? All right, come on. And it's weird because I knew that the guy that was greeting me was green. So my first thing was that instinct clicked in as this guy's never been to jail, but I've done plenty of time before. So I already know I got the upper hand on him. Mm-hmm. So he's like, oh, you've been locked? Yeah, I've done time before. Yeah, definitely. And I gave my cover story. So once I went in, the politics pretty much was the same. Like, hey, we don't deal with the kinfolks. We don't deal with the Woods. So I'm like, it's just different names, but it's the same politics. Mm-hmm. So it's like, and I just played the game to the way they wanted to. So when I told myself I'm the enforcer, I was literally an enforcer in the game. I was literally gonna collect the money, do what I had to do. In real life, my whole past, I was really enforcing.
Yeah.
I was shooting people coming out of the club in the leg, walking away like it was nothing. So I was really enforcing. So when people are like, yo, he wasn't the enforcer, or that was just my mind going back to who I used to be.
Yeah.
And I was just surprised when I went home. And I had that foundation from my family, like every time I went to visit, because then there was the visits were gung-ho, because they're just gonna laugh at you. And it's like you said, some people looked at it like extreme, mm-hmm. right? Like when, for instance, when I smacked Ikaika, and Ikaika forgave me. I literally talked to him. He's a good kid. He's home. Everything's all right. So I know that I made one act in there that other people didn't like, but I know I saved that kid's life because he was not built to go over the wall.
Yeah, I watched that part. And for those that haven't seen the show or know what we're talking about, I'll give a quick little synopsis. So, Abner's a major part of the gang in jail at this point, and he's helping to enforce rules. That's why they called him the enforcer, right? And I don't remember the exact story, but this one kid, he violated something he wasn't supposed to do, and did he call you a bitch or something like that?
Yeah,
right?
when I confronted him about it, because pretty much it's in jail they call it G-check when you, and the whole thing about it was over some coffee, but the coffee was owed to one of the Chicano. So me taking the position as the enforcer and getting the green light, the head tells me, which the head is the leader, tells me he's going around telling the Woods that I owe him for the coffee, and that coffee is about to get paid when commissary comes. So when I questioned him about it, he was green. He never, he was talking to an outsider, which is in prison, in actual prison, a big violation.
Right.
It's almost like you're a spy. So when I confronted him about it, he pretty much didn't know how to act, and he was like, fuck you.
Mm-hmm.
So
that was my point there. Then like some of the people that like were maybe naysaying that you like slapped this kid, you know what I mean? Because I look at it like this, if you're gonna go into a situation like this, like why are you there, right? Like that's the biggest question. Why are you there? You're supposed to blend in and get as much intel as you can and show what the life's about. If you let some little 18-year-old skinny kid call you a bitch or call you out of your name, like nobody's gonna respect you in there. That's at least my experience when I've gone to jail.
Yeah, that's the truth.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
it's the truth.
I've never been to like prison, but in jail, like if somebody calls you a bitch and you don't do anything about it, nobody's gonna respect you, right?
That's anywhere.
So that to me is like as big as like blowing your cover, right? Like to me, like if you don't respond to that situation, you're kind of screwed. And I think we've seen it on other episodes of 60 Days In where somebody gets punked out and then nobody respects them anymore after
true.
that, right? And you kind of already had like a higher, position up in that pod that you were trying to hold on to. So, I definitely get it. It was a tough situation that you were put in, because it's similar to me or like someone else, like taking an addict and putting him back in a world of drugs daily on a daily basis. It's right back in that lifestyle. So like, what do you think is going to happen? So before we talk too much more about the 6 days in part, I want to know, like, how did you get out of the gang life? How did you find God? I want to know that.
All right. I was I've served multiple sentences, but my main ones was upstate and the feds. So when I went to the feds, I did 7 years, 84 months, and when I was in there, it was a gang brawl, but the gang brawl was within the gang. It was like a power struggle with the gang was where I was in with who I was with, the gang. And one day there was a scenario where the guy ended up getting cut. He got slashed in the face, the blood fell on me, I'm next to him, and I get swung on by the same gang member. So it's like total chaos. I got 1 year to go home.
Yeah.
1 year. I already have my clothes ready, I'm going home, my family's waiting for me because after doing 6 years and you got 1 year left, it's like, hey. Names like Shorty 240 because he had 240 years. Like,
yeah.
Literally.
Like they literally have like nothing to lose.
Like nothing.
Right?
Like 40 bolt. Because he has 40 years. They and you're around people like that. So 7 years is like nothing. And I went in there, pled guilty to the 7 years, and took it in the chin. Like, people might say, whoa, 7 years is a long time. 7 years is a long time, but if you go to trial and you have 3 felonies and you get 25 for each one, then you're looking at 75
years. 7 years sounds a lot better than 75 in hindsight, right? And that's the crazy thing. I'll detour off topic real quick, just about our criminal justice system in general, which firsthand, that it's awful. You know what I mean? There's so many people that they have to plead to crimes either they're not guilty of, or they basically just get screwed in the end, right? Because they'll hit you with 5 different charges. You'll be looking at 100+ years. If you don't, your options are, okay, I can possibly, if I lose a trial, I'll get 100 years. If I win at trial, I'm scot-free, or I can take this deal where I do like 5.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, do I want to take 5 or risk 100? Like, and it's like 50-50 on whether you win or not. It's a tough decision, you know.
Yeah, it's the system's pretty much screwed up. I mean, I've been in the bullpen where a guy molests 10 kids and goes home on probation.
Yeah, that's another thing I just saw today, back from the area I'm from in Ohio. This young kid, I think he's like 22, 23, got sentenced to 4 years in prison because he had a big marijuana operation. Grew a bunch of weed in his house, right? Like had lights and everything. Gave him 4 years for this, right? That same judge gave a guy that was convicted of molesting a child 3 years. So literally, you got a guy that's just growing some pot, getting more time than the child molester. It's crazy how the system works like that.
Yeah,
It really is.
I ended up doing 7 years for weapons in the feds because of my background. I didn't hurt anybody. I had clean guns. I was just convicted felon with a possession of a firearm.
Right.
And literally, they wanted to throw away the key at me. They didn't hurt anybody, anything.
Yeah, you just got caught with a gun.
Just got caught with the gun. Now, if I would have not had a record, I would have got 8 months, 6 months, probation, whatever. But my record was so extensive that the federal system
They maxed you.
The guidelines, and it's pretty much. I mean, I don't regret anything that happened to me in my past because it's made me who I am today. But the 7 years when I was incarcerated, back to to that incident where it turned me around. Coming from the yard with my another gang member that's in the same gang, my brother in the gang, and I'm walking with him, and around us are other gang members from the same gang. So they ended up putting what's more like a theater, like swing at me, punch me, like 2-3 guys on me, but it was all a distraction to cut him. Mm-hmm. So when he got cut, the camera, the angle, what they call the blind spots. The blind spot sees my back and my face, but I'm holding him because he just got cut.
So it looks like you cut him.
It looks.
And this is the last year that you got.
My last year to go home. I got my clothes ready. I'm ready to go home. That year when I went to the SHU to see because you go to the disciplinary board. A disciplinary board is they call it a kangaroo court. Mm-hmm. So they're like, who did it? You can't say who did it,
right?
Because you're going back to a max yard,
right?
And you just told on the guy that cut some guy's face. Literally, you're dead,
right?
So you can't say anything. And I literally pled guilty, and they wanted to charge me, but the district attorney didn't pick it up in the street. So I ended up doing 1 full cycle year in SHU in the box.
So is that like isolation?
Total isolation.
24-hour day lockdown?
I was in Lewisburg Penitentiary, and it was a D block. D block used to be like the ward, the loony ward, but D block is now the SHU, which is 23-1. But sometimes you don't get the 1 hour outside. Sometimes you don't get the shower. So you get a shower Tuesday and Thursdays. Sometimes you don't get it.
So you get a shower twice a week if you're lucky.
If you're
That's
lucky.
Crazy.
If you're lucky.
Yeah. Pointing is
4-point is literally they tie your hands and they tie your feet and leave you in boxers and open the window and literally you use the bathroom on yourself.
Oh shit. They do that there, huh?
They do that there.
That's crazy.
And what they do is they force feed you. So when you're there, they'll put a cone in your mouth and they'll flush what's like that Ensure milk down your throat because you don't want to eat.
Right.
That's 4 points. I did 3 years when I did that. 3 days when I did that 1 year in SHU in the beginning because you're like a caged animal. And I used to literally take feces, rub it on the wall just to make the correction officer's job worse.
Yeah.
So I would give him a cocktail. Cocktail is you pee and you shit in a cup, bottle, anything. He walks by, you find the first crack, hit him right in the mouth.
Yeah.
That's your entertainment when you're in the box.
Yeah, because you have nothing else to do, right?
You,
so you go crazy and throw shit at people.
You count I remember I used to sit in the SHU and I used to tie my state boot And I used to throw little pieces of food in the corner and kill mice. Kill 4 or 5 mice a night. Like that was your only human contact. Your only contact with being civil. No letters. The COs would come, rip it up, lust on your girlfriend's pictures. That's the type of things they do when you're in SHU.
Yeah.
There's no secret about it. It's been going on for years. You know, they'll go in there when using the N-word, it's like using your name. Like there's no, don't, anybody that thinks 60 days in is real prison, it has a rude awakening. Like
Right.
nowhere near.
I've heard a lot of people that have spent time, you know, in 23-1 lockdowns or 24-hour lockdowns. That isolation shit, like some people go crazy, like
Yeah.
literally crazy the rest of their life because you have no human contact
Yeah.
and they treat you so badly in there too.
Yeah, so when I was in the SHU, one of the officers that I was giving a hard time, the CEO, I wake up one day, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and he opened up the trap. The trap is with the slot where they give you the food, but you can hear it because they literally crank it open.
Right.
And he opened it up and he threw a Bible in the cell. Like I was baffled. Here I am being a menace, like psycho. And this officer, always quiet, and I'm giving him a hard time, he throws me a Bible. So I grabbed that Bible, and the first thing I did, I checked it. Like, man, he's probably threw a razor in there. He's trying to set me up.
Yeah.
Or he wants me to kill myself, because they'll do that.
Right.
They, you know. And I threw the Bible to the side, and I started just every day. There was nothing else to do in there. No visits. My visits were taken away. My commissary. You don't get commissary in there. You only get 1 tube of toothpaste, like in a cup. Nothing. You don't get 1 sheet, boxes, and you're in there all day sweating. And or unless it's winter time. And I started reading the Bible. So for about 11 months, I just started reading the Bible. Then I started reading the Bible without distractions. So I didn't have a preacher or a pastor screaming or somebody saying, no, that's not what that means or that means. And it started making sense to me. Mm-hmm. And every time I would open the Bible, if I felt suicidal at that moment, which I did plenty of time, it would be a scripture about life. So it was like, you know, like every time I opened that Bible, it spoke to me, little by little.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
That's where my transformation came about. So I found salvation in the SHU, in the box. And I went home and, you know, when I went home, I had some jewelry and a couple guns. I sold everything. I said, you know what? I don't need this stuff anymore. And I sold it, bought a car, started working, and people started looking at me like, what do you got any, people that I knew used to ask me, you got any work? You got any dope? Nah, I'm on my way to work. I don't do that no more.
They must have been looking at you like,
yeah,
crazy
they're like,
right?
What do you mean you're working? Like, for parole? You're putting up a front for parole? Like,
right.
No, like, I don't want to go back to jail. And I remember the last time when I was in jail, in prison, and I walked out, the officer told me, you'll be back. He told me just like that, Garcia, you'll be back. And I listened to him, and I heard it before. But this time it was like, nah.
Yeah, you actually knew.
I'm done with this. Like at 30-something, 39 years old when I left, it was like, well, I was like actually like 36. I'm not coming back. Here I go. I got 5 years parole. I got to do them every bit of that 5 years. No good time, no nothing. And I completed those full 5 years to the point that my parole officer, before he retired, he said, Abner, I never met anyone that changed without the system, because the system doesn't change you. There's no rehabilitation at all.
Right.
If you go in there with a misdemeanor, you're gonna come out of there with a felony mentality. There's no fixing it.
True. Yeah.
I've seen people go into prison without an addiction and come out with a $100, $200 addiction from the yard.
Yep.
Prison doesn't fix anyone. There's more drugs in prison than there is in the street.
Right.
Like, even if you have an addiction, you can cook, you can wash clothes, you can feed your addiction in prison. You know, and it's been times I've seen correction officers bring drugs in. It's been visits or they'll let, because, you know, green buys anything. Like,
Yeah.
so prison, the whole system needs fixing.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that, you know, when someone goes to prison, it's basically just like a timeout in their life, right? Nothing changes. You know what I mean? You go in there, that person, you leave that person. And if you don't teach someone anything different, like especially, you know, my experience is mainly with addiction. So I know, you know, when an addict goes to jail or prison, particularly prison, you know, they're going to be in there with other people that are using, other people. Yeah. They usually come out worse. I know I usually did too. It's very rare that you have cases like myself or yourself where you go in and then you come out and like something happens. And then like my opinion, and I think 99% of the people that I've seen change their life from jail or from prison, it has something to do with God, right? Yeah. And your whole story that you told, man, really hit me, because it reminded me how God is. Like, you know, how unlikely that is, right? So like you're throwing shit and piss at the CO.
Yeah.
The CO throws a Bible back at you, right? You pick it up and it changes your life. Like, how cool is that? You know, that's amazing. Yeah. So just to think, you know, you're sitting in there, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I've done it too, you know. Something will really be on my mind, or I'll be going through something really crazy, right? And I'll pick up the Bible and I'll open it up, and that verse is like exactly what I needed to hear that day. You know, and I've seen the same thing, like when I go to a 12-step meeting, like I'll have something really weighing heavy on my heart, and like the speaker there will be talking about exactly what I'm going through. And to me, like, that's God, you know what I mean? That's God, like, trying to talk to you, you know, yeah. Whether it's the Bible or other people. So that's a really cool thing, man.
Yeah, no, you know? When he gave me the Bible, the thoughts that were on my mind was really hanging up and killing myself. Like, I didn't have anything else. Like, I literally had the sheet ready. I really was tired of it. He knew, he saw in my eyes that I was ready to just hang up. And I've seen it. I've seen people hang up in jail. They hang themselves.
So you think that CO knew that you were at that point? You think so?
I was already worn out.
Yeah.
Like, I knew that it was nowhere for me to go. I'm here stuck for a full year. Like, it's like misery at its best. Like, the stench, sometimes they would shut off the toilet and let you sit in there in feces for 2, 3, 4 days. Yeah. Like, it just everything in general, your senses, your smell, your sight, you know, I went in there with 20/20 vision and came out blind as a bat, you know, everything. So I wanted to commit suicide, because here I am, it's easier. Let me just kill myself. I don't got to do 5 years on parole, because I know I'm coming back. Because I know when I go home, I don't have a job waiting for me.
Right, you know, you're going back to that same lifestyle.
The same.
You're going to eventually end up back in the shoe again, you know, and being in a place that's literal shit. You know, it's not just a shitty situation, it's like literal shit.
Yeah.
You know? So I get that, man. It's just amazing to me, like hearing stories like that, and then my own experiences and Shanda's and other people that I've met. Like, God is powerful. And that's really all people have to do is just look around. And you can see evidence of it around us. You know, it's just whether or not you're willing to look and to listen, you know. I don't know if you felt this way, but I felt like with the show, like they left out like so much like important stuff, I feel like my background and like why I was doing the show and stuff. So that's what I want to give you an opportunity to talk about. So yeah, tell me a little bit about, you know, when you got out of prison, you know, you're starting to work again. Like, what did you do differently? You know, did you start going to church? How did you get involved in ministry?
When I was in the box, I used to scribble. I had an old notebook, and I used to scribble stuff in there. And it was like bad stuff, good stuff. And I took that booklet with me along with a bunch of letters. You know, when you go home, you take this paperwork. And I went home and I started working. When I started working, the one thing I always put on my mind, it was like almost like a quote. I'm not going back to jail. I'm not going back to jail. So I everything I related to it. If I had a girlfriend that liked it, a drug dealer, I'm not going back to jail. You're not the one for me.
Yeah.
If I had a friend that he's selling dope or he's sticking people up, I'm not going back to jail. So I put that in front of me all the time. Every day I woke up, I'm not going back. I'm not going back. I can't. Because I knew that if that would be my last time going back. So I started working. And it was jobs that people didn't want. You know, I started working asbestos, got certified, and, you know, sucking up
So
cancer.
you're working with asbestos?
I was working with asbestos.
So you wanted it bad, though.
Yeah.
I know Shanda's probably thinking this too right now, like the affirmation of I'm not going back to jail, almost like a mantra and affirmation. Me and her do a lot of this. You know, we try to just speak positive things into existence, and there's a lot of, you know, it talks about that in the Bible. You know, ask God and it'll happen. You know, so we do a lot of that. So to hear from you say like that was something you were doing in there, I'm not going back to jail. I'm not going back to jail, and then making it a reality. Unless it was for TV, right?
Yeah,
you know? It's a very cool thing, though, man. So.
Yeah, and it even started even with my parole officer. When I went home, he was like, quote unquote, the worst. You know, the a-hole parole officer. Oh, he's the asshole. You're going back. Mm-hmm. You're going back to jail. He sends everybody back.
Yeah.
So when I see him, you know, I literally grabbed the bag and I told him, send me back. He literally threatened me with sending me back, and I told him, send me back, because I'm not scared of jail. Now, I'm not sitting here breaking curfew, selling drugs, doing anything. Leave me alone. I just want to work. I just want to be free.
Right.
And he respected that. He gave me full freedom. Didn't bother
he treated
me.
you good, right?
He treated me
now,
good.
It's interesting you say that, because I had a probation officer that everybody said the same thing, right? Like, he's the asshole probation officer. He's going to lock you up. He's going to give you a hard time. This guy did everything for me, right? He looked out for me. Like, I asked to go to a concert, and he let me leave state to go to this concert. Well, why did he let me do that? Because I never gave him a reason to violate me. I never gave him a reason to be pissed off at me. I was very respectful. I made all my drug tests. I worked. I did everything I needed to do. I'm assuming it was the same for you.
Yeah.
Like,
when you're doing the right thing. They know when you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, they can. And I think a lot of probation officers, I think some get a bad rap. Like, believe it or not, there's actually some good ones. I know there's some that are really bad.
Yeah, there are.
And I think that they get frustrated. Like, compassion fatigue is a very real thing. And what that means is just, you know, they see people coming in and out of jail, relapsing all the time, overdosing, dying, shooting people. You know, some of the worst aspects of us as humans, right? And they get discouraged. They think, none of these guys are going to change. I'm just going to make their life miserable because they're assholes, right? So I'm going to be an asshole too. So I think when somebody comes along like you or like me, that like they see it in your eyes, your aura, your person, like how you carry yourself has a very big impact on people. And I think sometimes they can see that, like, hey, this guy's like, he's, you know, working with cancer chemicals, he's working with asbestos, like he's doing whatever he can to stay straight, right?
Yeah, people, when you're doing positive people come to you. Mm-hmm. You attract positive people, believe it or not.
Absolutely.
And it was like, I'm working, and here's the boss of the bosses, and he's saying, hey, Abner, he knows me on a first name basis. This guy's a millionaire, he doesn't even have to be on a job site. But he knows that this guy's the one that's working, because I'm working for him, you know. And it came about with that. And 4 things that happened with me that led on, that I say God put in my path. And people ask, well, how did you do that? 4 things that happened with me. When I went home and I started working, I actually didn't know that I had a book. And I shared it with somebody and said, read this. I used to put this right in jail. It's like, this is a book. You should just, you know.
Yeah.
And I literally wrote a book. And I didn't have to pay for my publisher. It was offered to me. It was literally, no, I'll print it. I got you. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, I got you. You know. And I wrote the book. So after I wrote the book, as far as ministry, the 700 Club reached out to me from Virginia Beach. And it's funny because I was on parole. And the supervisor didn't want me to go to Virginia Beach. So I called 700 Club back and I said, hey, you know, I can't go. You know, this is Gordon Jr. This is the owner of the 700 Club.
So again, for people, just explain real briefly what 700 Club
700 Club is CBN, Christian Broadcast Network. So it's actually a channel. Okay. And they reached out to me because they heard of the book, and people just word of mouth. It almost spreads like you're selling mixtapes.
Yeah.
You know,
Right,
but
right.
it's, you know, ministry. And they reached out to me, and at the time I was about to wrap up parole, and they actually said, no, you're not going to Virginia Beach. Here I am doing the right thing. I'm almost finishing parole, and I have to call them and tell them I can't go. So I literally couldn't go. So I get a phone call the next day, and they say, no, don't worry, we'll fly a home film crew out there. I said, really? Yeah. So my house literally turned into, you know, what you guys know. Equipment everywhere, lights everywhere, hey, you know, and for a 6-minute clip that's on YouTube, they took a whole weekend to film. I didn't have to pay for anything, they did everything. And that stood online for a long time. It has like 90,000 views, but it stood online for a long time before it even got that far. And from that, that's the third one, the A&E found me through that. It was a 6-minute clip. I don't know how, who, what. And they reached out to me. And that's how I got into 60 Days In. But before I got into 60 Days In, I was already holding a New York State chaplain badge.
Yeah, so tell me, how'd you get into that?
I was a friend of the family. I was chaplain, people get it mistaken. I'm not a preacher, I'm not a pastor, no. Chaplain ministers to all. No religion, no race, doesn't matter. It could be someone in the street, homeless, it could be an addict. We minister to all. That's what a chaplain is, you know. And it was about a 10-week, you know, program. So someone asked me that, hey, why you don't become a chaplain? So, no, I'm not a pastor, that's religion, you know. No, a chaplain is just to help people. So here I am, this guy, you know, all right, you know. And I became a chaplain, and I just started, you know, my wife would think I was a little crazy sometimes because I would sit there in one of the worst projects in New York City and give someone money, but here I am preaching to them like, hey, there's hope, man, you know. And my wife was sitting in the car with locked doors.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know that guy, you know, but it's ministry. So word of mouth came about, and then I went into the Red Cross, and I started volunteering. I had my Red Cross badge, took CPR, doing things that were not normal for me. So here I am, an ex-con, ex-gang member, and I'm with 60-year-old white ladies, like, all right, where we going today? Where we volunteering? Like, these are my friends now.
Yeah.
This is what I do. You know, we go and we go into old folks' houses and put fire extinguishers, change their batteries. I remember one time I changed 30 houses, you know, and that's ministry. And anything you do is ministry, helping other people. And here I am, an ex-con, and I took from everybody. I took from people I hurt, you know, victims, the system, anyone, even taxpayers. I was taking the taxpayers' money. I hurt a lot of people, so this was my way of giving back to society. And I've volunteered. I've done above and beyond what an ex-felon would do. So I stopped making excuses. Is what I stopped doing. I stopped blaming the system. I don't like pigs, or nah, man, they're racist.
Or I got felonies. I can't do that. You know, right?
So now my mind clicked that when I heard people like that, like you're lying. I can't have liars around me if I'm being honest with myself. So I started looking at those people like, no, like with caution. No, I can't hang out, you know. And even when I was when I came home, I was doing volunteering classes. I took NA. I didn't need NA,
right.
AA, but the things they were saying were positive. People, places, and things.
Yep.
Hey, you got to change people, places, and things. I'm like, you know, so here I am with 20 addicts. Well, what's your story? You know, are you an addict? I used to smoke cigarettes, smoked a pack of Newports a day, and I don't know how I just stopped smoking. Right. When I went to grab a pack, they were already stale. A week went by, and I didn't smoke a cigarette. It just didn't bother me anywhere because I started doing things, but I started doing positive things. Anything that anybody didn't want. You know, my parole officer didn't have to make me. Oh, I gotta go to these classes, violence classes. I didn't have to. Hey, can I go?
Yeah.
My parole officer's looking at me like I'm crazy.
Right.
You want to go to the classes? Yeah.
Right.
There's nothing to do. I occupied myself to stay off the street as much as I could.
It kind of comes back to that principle you were talking about. When you do positive things and become a positive person, like you say, you end up drawing people towards you that are positive, you know, and you do positive things. And it's a really powerful thing, like you just said, you know. You wrote a book without knowing you were going to write a book, and brought a lot of positivity through that. So how did you get started with the prison ministry then?
The prison ministry, I started with a friend of mine. He came home and he was in a halfway house. So he's like, hey man, you think you could bring me some cigarettes? And I'm not bringing you nothing to the halfway house. What do you mean? I'm going to get in trouble. Nah, you know, and I ended up talking to the counselor, and the counselor invited me. And just from there, speakings was me talking to somebody, except they call it being a speaker, motivational speaker.
Yeah.
Like, hey man, you don't have to do that. You really don't have to sit here and sell dope. You really don't have, and I didn't care if I slept under a bridge. I was not going back to jail. I was not committing a crime. No more. I can't do it. So a buddy of mine that was at the halfway house said, come over to the halfway house, because he couldn't get visits. So here I am. The counselor said, come back. And from there, it just opened other doors to go into prisons. I've done speakings in schools. And schools is a little different because I'm an ex-felon. So they can't announce, hey, the ex-felon from 60 days in is coming to be around our kids. No, it's more like they just sneak me in there. And once I'm in there, the kids recognize me. This is the guy that was on 60 days in that smacked that kid.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what they know me.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody that's struggling with like the gang life or with addiction that wants to turn their life around?
Yeah, I would say for someone that's struggling with addiction or even prison life or even gang life, I would say the number one thing that some of us are tied up, even as far as men, you know, and I say men because if you don't have a spouse that has a balance with you, right? So if you were a dope dealer and she encourages you to sell dope, you're gonna be a dope dealer for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're gonna be violent and she encourages violence and just doesn't care if you're violent, you know, it's just that addiction goes with it, you know, and it's going back to changing places, people, and things, you know, things. You have to change. So I was in a relationship for 10 years and raised her kids. And I literally had to say goodbye because you're attached to my past. So anyone that's going through that, the first step is, if you're gonna move forward in the future, you have to forget about your past. And that's with everything. Like, as far as the drugs, anything, any addiction, because believe it or not, being in a toxic relationship is an addiction because you keep going back to it.
And like you said, the lifestyle, you know, that's almost an addiction in itself. So I thought it was interesting you said that, because that's one of the first things I'll tell people trying to get over a drug addiction. You got to change people, places, and things, right? So if you stay around that same environment, same type of people, you'll end up back in that lifestyle.
You'll end up back. It's almost a guarantee. So it's like going back to prison. It's 99% that people will go back, and it's a 1%. So to convince someone to come in that 1%, I knew I was at 1%. 30 arrests. You know, going to a bar, here I am, I'm going to jail. You know, I would tell someone, change your lifestyle. Try it. Try it for a while. And once you keep doing it, it becomes normal to you. Because the street life, some people look at it as normal. It's not normal. It's as chaotic as a terrorist chopping someone's head off. It's not normal. Right. To someone that's civil, it's not normal. But society nowadays makes it like that. So for someone that's going through that, my advice will be change everything. Crucially, change everything. When you wake up tomorrow, do the same thing I did. I say I'm not dealing with anyone in my past because it's gonna attach me to my past. So you're always gonna relapse. So every day you wake up, it's a relapse. So you're hanging around somebody that's selling drugs, you're gonna sell drugs. You're hanging around with somebody that's doing drugs, you're gonna do drugs. If you're sleeping with someone that's doing drugs, you're gonna wake up doing drugs.
Right.
So you have to change everything, you know. And I know religion, a lot of people don't look at it because you're not gonna turn into a saint the next day. But it's something positive, you know. And I went from having felon friends, which I still, you know, have friends that every now and then I say hi to. But I went from having friends and having celebrity friends, pastors, bishops, cops, sheriffs that are my friends. And before I used to be afraid, oh, I can't talk to these guys. Those are the people I associate with because they're positive.
Right.
You know, you can't be afraid to go out of the box. You know, don't be a follower, be a leader. You know?
Absolutely. No, it makes a lot of sense. You know, like if you don't want to keep using drugs, you know, stop hanging around people that are using drugs. You don't want to be a gangbanger anymore, stop hanging out with the gangbangers. Start hanging out with the church people or whoever it may be.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, you're hanging out with old ladies for a little while.
Yeah, I used to make fun of a square person.
Right. Right.
Man, this guy's a punk, man. This guy, and that's how society looks at it. Like,
Right.
"Ah, this guy's a sucker."
Yeah.
So if in 60 days in, if I was a square, then he was terrible on 60 days out. It's the same thing in life.
Mm-hmm.
But that sucker goes home every day, has a job, has a paycheck, has a family, doesn't have to sit here and eat ramen and noodles and suffer or being told when to shower, you know, or anything. You're free. So what people look at it as a sucker, call me a sucker. And one thing I always used to tell people, you know, call me what you want to call me, but don't call me Colette. You know?
Yeah.
Because this is who I am now, you know, and I don't commit crimes.
I always thought that was an interesting aspect. I know, especially when I was younger, we kind of look at it like, oh, look at that loser over there with a 401k and 9-to-5 job, you know, that's going to be able to retire when he's 60. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like we look at that, like, look at that guy being responsible. Like, why do we, like, demonize that in society or make fun of it? You know, I don't know. It's an interesting thing.
And I mean, even with the normal things now, like when my wife says, let's go vote, I vote. I'm an ex-felon and I go vote.
Yeah.
People complain, but I put my vote in.
Yeah.
I don't care what party, I don't waste my time with that. I vote. But some people don't even think about that.
Right, or they think their vote doesn't matter, but that's the thing. Like, I think last election, it was like 50% of people that could vote actually voted, right? Only 50%. So, like, you know, at least 30% of those people were probably people that are like, oh, my vote doesn't matter, right? Those 30% of people went and voted. Who knows what would have happened?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true.
That's the whole thing. You know,
but it's the civil thing to do. You know, like when you pay your taxes, when you volunteer, when you vote, these are civil things. You know, I haven't got a ticket in years. You know, all the cops know me around my neighborhood. I live in the suburbs. You see where I live?
Yeah.
I don't
got a beautiful house, man.
I don't have to live like that anymore. You know, my enemies are the coyotes that want to take my chihuahua. You know, so
right.
You know, but you go from chaos to being blessed, and you know, and my blessings are anybody's blessings. You just have to go. Don't chase them; they're gonna come to you. Mm-hmm. I didn't have to lift a finger up. God literally put them right in front of me, and every day I tell people, I am blessed, and before I leave this, before I turn 50, I will be a millionaire. And people are like, I will be a millionaire because every prophecy that has passed, that someone has whispered in my ear, has came to. So if I had my ex-spouse, and I couldn't count with 2-3 hands her past, now I can count what I asked God for. Bring me a wife that I can count the past with one finger. And he did it.
Yeah.
from another country, Canada.
Oh wow. Okay.
So here I am. I have to explain to my wife why I can't go to Canada.
Yeah. I can't
So we're gonna have to get married
Yeah.
if you want to be with me, you know. And it's just things that I did little by little. I removed tattoos from my neck, my hands. I just, it wasn't that I was ashamed, but now that I had a passport and my wife tells me, well, if we're gonna go to my country, Colombia, they look at tattoos a little different. So let's remove them. Okay. So here I am, ex-felon, getting a stamp on my passport. My first time leaving the United States. I'm looking at the border patrol like, you know, like, are you gonna put me in jail? Like,
Right.
you know, you feel intimidated because, but once you go out of that, your mind just, you go into another place, you know. And I've sometimes traveled overseas by myself and gone and ministered in the prison, you know. And it's the normal thing to do. It's a blessing, but I'm an ex-felon. 2022, I'm gonna have dual citizenship with Canada.
Really?
Because my wife and my son are Canadian.
Okay.
And they said I can go after 5 years being clear.
That's awesome, man. That's
So,
awesome.
I mean, these are things that, you know, people might look at, no, that's impossible. You could do it, you know, and I encourage anyone, you know, stay positive, do what you got to do. Just don't go back to jail. Don't go back to doing drugs. It's not worth it, man. It's a feeling of staying clean and free, and you don't have to be with the paranoia and how do I get my next fix? Because a felon is the same way. If you're selling dope, how do I go pick up my next batch?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same.
How do you keep that money going?
How do you keep
Addiction
it
to
flowing?
money? Yeah.
And it's an addiction. The lifestyle, you get up in the morning, you're bagging up 40, 50 grams of heroin and you go sell them and you know. But at the end of the day, you're going to lose more than that. And it's the same thing with addiction and going to jail. It's the same thing. You lose. You lose family. You lose time. You know, all the time that I've accumulated, if I would have stood home and worked, I would have been a millionaire already.
Yeah.
And here I am in a prison working for 50 cents
Right.
an hour.
Yep.
Making license plates, whatever it might be, you know. But I encourage anyone, just stay out, man. Stay out, you know. You're not alone. Everybody's out here. You know, anyone struggling with addiction or anybody going back, you know. Just stay positive, man. Have positive people around you.
Was there anything else you wanted to touch on or something you wanted to say that maybe people didn't get to hear from you on 60 Days or anything like that?
Yeah. So after 60 days in, a lot of people wonder and they ask. A lot of people ask me or they watch the show like, Abner, what are you doing? I got into acting. So I have worked around shows like Power with 50 Cent, Law and Order. I played a prosecutor, a lawyer, you know, and people ask me, you know, and when I'm on the train or I'm in New York City working, you know, even some actors that are there, you know, aren't you the guy from 60 Days In? Yeah, but I'm doing background acting now. Mm-hmm. You know, here I am at SVU, you know, not too long, I just worked on the Jeffrey Epstein scene and I played the guy's lawyer and I'm next to him. I'm like, this is the Jeffrey Epstein scene and here I am.
Yeah.
An ex-felon and I'm playing a lawyer.
Yeah, it's interesting, man.
You know, so it's like, but I encourage anyone, you could do anything you want. You know, don't restrict yourself. You know, I went there, they didn't ask me for my criminal record. I went in there, yeah, you know, you're photogenic. Yeah, we'll use you. And every week I go, and what someone makes in a week, I make in one day. You know, it's like,
it's a blessing.
it's a blessing.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
and you can do it. Anyone can do it. You know, so anybody asking what Abner is doing after 60 days in, I'm a background actor for SVU Law and Order. You know,
Very cool, man. Playing a prosecutor, right?
Playing a prosecutor,
it's the perfect
lawyer.
role for you, right? The perfect role.
Yeah, I guess they think I'm too pretty to be a criminal.
To be
So these glasses have got me a long way.
Yeah,
so
there you go. Yeah, you got the prosecutor glasses
Yeah.
now, you know. So
But that's the story of my life, you know, and it's there for anybody. You know, it's everybody has a testimony. You know, mine is not bigger than the next one because it could be a small one. It could be a victimized woman that can help other women that are victimized. Anyone. There's a testimony out there. Just, you know, use your testimony and help people. Don't just sit there and complain about the bad things that happened in the past. Because a lot of bad things happened to me that those people should have been in jail, even through the system. But here I am. I thank them because it's made me the person I am today. And I will definitely never, ever in my life go back to jail because I don't need it. I'm blessed now, you know, and anybody can be blessed. Just stay positive. Positive things will come to you.
Well, brother, I gotta say it's been an absolute pleasure getting to sit down and talk with you face to face, hear your story, and just kind of hear your testimony, man. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you for being one of the real ones, you know, and just keep doing what you're doing, you know. It's somebody's gonna listen and somebody's gonna change. If you can help one person out of 1 million views, that's all, you did your job.
Absolutely.
You did your job. If you do the whole reality TV show and you save one kid, you did your job. You did a show and you saved one addict from relapsing, you did your job. And that's all
and I believe that, man. I think there's going to be a lot of people that'll watch this that I think will be encouraged to change their life as a result of it. So, again, for that, I thank you, man.
Thank you,
awesome.
man. Thank you.